Well, I'm not going to lie to anybody. A series loss is never good, but God, is it worse when it's the Chicago White Sox, for goodness sakes.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasko. Carter First, too, as well. Our main Twitter account, at Locked On Jays. And if you're haven't already, go over to the Instagram page, the TikTok page. Follow us on both of those, at Locked On Blue Jays. And make sure, most importantly, you guys hit the subscribe button because it does help us out. It's free to do so. You might as well. You get your podcast, your shorts, your live streams, your videos, the whole ordeal right there on YouTube. And we appreciate it if you're listening anywhere else. Carter, this just it sucks, to say the absolute least. A series loss against the White Sox. We said this is a series you for sure have to win. You want to even look for a sweep, and instead this team drops 2 of 3. And again, we'll get into all of the games covering it, sort of. But, I mean, Hoffman had a blow-up, and that sort of takes the wind right out of your sails, even though I don't think it was the best series for the offense in totality. You had opportunities to win ball games outside of the first game. And they just couldn't take advantage. And again, we will talk a little bit about the pitching staff. We want to go into it a lot more on tomorrow's episode since it is an off day. So we will talk today, I guess, the off day. So we'll go into a bunch of stuff around pitching tomorrow. But we will touch on Max Scherzer, obviously returning to the team for his start on Wednesday. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today, but also Major League tomorrow because the return is absolutely huge. But Carter, first impressions from this weekend. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not great when you lose a series to the Chicago White Sox. I'm never going to be happy about a series like that. When we have these series, no matter if it's against the White Sox, the Dodgers, the Yankees, it always seems like one game is going to go in the opposing team's favor. You're going to have one game, and there's going to be a third game somewhere in there that you're going to have to battle, and that's going to decide the series. In this series, it was Game 3. Game 1 was all White Sox. Didn't really have a chance after Spencer Turnbull leaves the game, honestly. And then you got the flip side, Jose Berrios dominant in the second game. The White Sox don't really have a chance there. The Blue Jays offense kind of gets to Savali early. And then this third game, up for grabs. A lot of opportunities for the Blue Jays offense to score. Another good outing from Chris Bassitt. But that's the game you got to win. If you want to take a series, they are unable to do that. And some of the hands go to the offense. Some of it goes to Jeff Hoffman that we're going to have to talk about. And just not a great momentum swing when you're in this softer part of your schedule and you started off with a series loss to the Chicago White Sox, who have won their second game on the road now. Again, one of the two are against the Toronto Blue Jays. That's not a sense you want to be a part of for a Toronto Blue Jays organization. Overall, not a great weekend, but I'm not going to, again, it's a loss to the White Sox. It sucks, but I'm not going to sound the alarm bells because this team is still, is it 5 games above 500 now, I believe?
Yeah. They are 5 games up. Yeah, you're right. And you know what, Carter? There's a lot I want to say, but in the grand scheme of things, every baseball team is going to lose a series that you don't want to. It's 162 games of the year. There are going to be games that you think that you should beat up on a team and you don't. There's going to be games where you play somebody really good and you think, oh, if we can get one win here, I'll be happy. And you end up sweeping or something like that, right? So there's the give and the take with a baseball series. But yeah, we were just on the losing end of this one for sure. And as frustrating as that is, because, it should have been a fun weekend of baseball to watch. You would think the Blue Jays are going to beat up on them, but you go in and you start the series getting beat 7-1. And, you sort of have to climb out emotionally of that hole because you just got stomped by one of the worst teams in baseball. So you go into game 2, you pick up that win 7-1, and you think, okay, we got the momentum back. We're rolling. And then you come in and everybody, so besides Chris Bassitt, really, and Yariel Rodriguez, sort of lays an egg in game 3. So I don't know. I was a little bit up and down with this series because I think the second game is the Toronto Blue Jays team that we have been seeing for the past little bit here. there was regression back to, I think, how this team started the year in game one. And yeah, especially game three for me, Carter. I guess game one, major takeaways. What do you got?
Well, it's got to be the Spencer Turnbull start, making his first start as a part of the Toronto Blue Jays. And it doesn't really go that well. Just a lot of 91, 90 mile per hour cookies down the middle with that fastball. Sweeper, again, location was the biggest thing for Spencer Turnbull in this game. When you're going against MLB hitters and you're already not throwing very quick whatsoever. Last year, averaged 92.5 miles per hour on the fastball. Now he's closer to 90 miles an hour on that fastball. When you're already not throwing hard, you kind of need that miles per hour, because big league hitters, no matter how good or bad they are, will be able to hit that fastball, and that's what the Chicago White Sox did. A lot of times, Alejandro Kirk was setting up the outside part of the plate, and then he's just missing inside. And it's not exactly the start that you want, especially when you're going into the series expecting to take advantage of a team that's not the way you want to start, obviously, with that Spencer Turnbull start that you did have. And then you tax the bullpen very heavily. You got 2 innings out of Spencer Turnbull. Mason Flaherty comes in, stinks it up as well. And just like that, the Blue Jays are completely out of this game. That's the main takeaway, is that once you're down so early in a baseball game, it's very hard to climb out of. And a lot of the time when we were talking earlier in this year, we were talking about how the offense wasn't picking it up. The pitching was very good, but it's tough to pitch, and it's tough to have outings where you can't make very many mistakes. And if you make one error, you give up 2 runs. You felt like earlier on the season that the game was going to be over. So I'm not necessarily going to blame the offense in game one, because it's kind of the flip now. You get down very early in a game. It's tough as an offense when you're down 5+ runs to get out of that mental lull and try to actually have good quality at bats. Try to stay mentally prepared in the game when you get down very early in a baseball game against a bad team.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about all of last season and to the beginning of this year, right? Is that if the pitching doesn't bring their best stuff, this team wasn't going to climb out of it. And sometimes you feel for the pitching. You're like, goodness gracious, like somebody give these guys some help. And now, yeah, we're getting to a little bit of a time here, especially with the 7-1 loss, where your offense is down so quickly that, I don't know, if I'm in that baseball game, I'm sitting in the dugout eating seeds for 2 innings that feel like it's taking an hour. It completely removes you from that game. So me and you talked about it when I think it was right after, maybe it was the Saturday morning, I believe, about the game on Friday, because we sort of both had the same feeling where it was like, well, that's a tough one. That's a tough soak, but we weren't really too beat up about that one, because those games do happen, especially with a guy coming in for his first start of the season. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too upset about that. I don't really have a ton to say on game one, because it was just sort of a throwaway. We were out at a housewarming on Friday night, and so I watched. I was, you were working, but I watched the first couple innings just at home, and I'm like, goodness gracious. And then by the time I got to the housewarming, Noah, our buddy, he's like, "Do you want me to keep the game on?" And I'm like, just have it on in the background if you don't mind, because I'm not going to sit here, sit inside watching the Blue Jays get absolutely killed. Everybody's outside. So anyways, I was trying to keep up the best I could. But by that point, it was, if you're going to miss a game, that's the game to miss, or at least some innings of. Carter, game 2, moving on to the victory.
I want to go back to game 1 just quickly. Okay. And it's a little bit about the Mason Flaherty stuff going on right now. He comes in the game, Spencer Turnbull. They take him out when there's 3 earned runs given up. He gives up a single. Mason Flaherty can come in and keep this game manageable at this point. But we saw Mason Flaherty be very effective early on in the season. It really hasn't gone his way over this last little bit here. Up to a 4.55 ERA. I'm going to go over what he has been doing in the last 15 games. In the last 7 games, it has not been very good. So in the last 15 games, 8.10 ERA over 13 and a third innings pitched, just giving up 15 hits, 12 earned runs, 7 walks, a whip of 1.65. And it's been even worse in the last 7 games, a 9.95 ERA over 6 and a third, 10 hits, 7 earned runs, giving up 4 walks, 8 strikeouts, a 2.21 whip. That's not great. That is not going to play whatsoever. With Mason Flaherty, again, a very young guy in his rookie season in the MLB, a 2-pitch pitcher, has the cutter and the sweeper working. And what did we see in his outing in that first game? A lot of the time, Alejandro Kirk was set up on the outside part of the plate, sometimes on the inside part of the plate. And what did we see with the cutter and the sweeper? We saw it be over the middle a ton. And a lot of the time, Alejandro Kirk standing up lower in the zone. If you can get that sweeper or cutter lower, especially if you're going against a lefty with Mason Flaherty, if you can get that a little front door sweeper low and inside, there'd be a lot more of a chance that hitters are going to swing and miss at that. When you catch a lot of the plate, especially with the sweeper, and you're not blowing anyone away with the velocity here, you're going to run into a little bit of trouble. So that was the biggest thing I've been seeing from Mason Flaherty recently. It's just before he was kind of hanging around the corners, having a lot on the black, especially with the sweeper against lefties, was very good at hitting that outside part of the corner. Now he's backing up, it seems like, a ton of them, and that's why they are catching a lot more of the plate. So there's going to have to be a conversation, I think, here coming up, because we already kind of talked about this before with Braden Fisher. You can't touch that guy. That guy's going to stay in this baseball team right now. You got Chad Green. When Jimmy Garcia comes back, you're going to have to make a move here. And with Mason Flaherty, he does have options. So if this team doesn't want to go away from Chad Green, then Mason Flaherty might be a candidate that they can send down, especially when you have Nick Sandlin, who can use that splitter and is fairly good against left-handed pitching, can use him as that, kind of middle relief guy. And obviously you still have Brendan Little for high leverage situations, but hasn't necessarily been that good from Mason Flaherty recently. But that's just, again, it's part of the MLB experience. It's not always going to go exactly according to plan when you're in the MLB.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about the pitching in general tomorrow. What are the options for this team as they move forward throughout this season? Obviously, getting towards the All-Star break, the trade deadline, everything like that. This team is going to have to identify what their biggest need is going to be. And right now, I think we can all see that the pitching staff needs an update. And we'll get more into that tomorrow, just since we have the off day and no games to recap. We were like, wow, this is a perfect opportunity, because something I wanted to really talk about was this pitching staff as a whole. So again, yes, you're right, Carter, with guys coming back, moves having to be made eventually. What is all going to happen? Again,
I got one more quick thing I want to quickly throw in here.
Sure.
From Spencer Turnbull and Mason Flaherty, like, the issue here is that you got 3 innings from them. These guys threw 80 pitches in 3 innings. Like, they just set your team up for the rest of the series to not be in a great spot. You had to throw Braden Fisher, Nick Sandlin, Chad Green, Brendan Little, and Jeff Hoffman after that. Obviously, in game 2, you kind of have a savior a little bit, and everything did work out, but not the way you want to start a series against any caliber of baseball team.
No, but I think in the back of their heads a little bit as well, they were like, this isn't worst case scenario, because you did have an off day coming, obviously, today. So you do get a little bit of a break there. So I don't think the panic was there for this team and trying to manage arms and who should throw how many, because you did have options, right? You did have options going into the
You did, but if you don't get that outing from Berrios, say Berrios has a little bit of a blow up, he only goes 4 innings, and then you got to throw another 5 innings of guys. I know you have an off day coming up, but you still have 2 games that you got to get through. So I think that could have been an issue down the road. Again, in retrospect, doesn't matter because Berrios did Berrios things, but I think that could have been a problem that the Jays would have had on the horizon.
Yeah, maybe for the game 3 especially, but the problem is, if you get the outing from this team, what they did in game 3, and which gave them a good chance to win that ball game, and it still doesn't go their way. So you're right. Retrospect, hindsight is 20/20 here, but for the most part, it is what it is. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back. We got to talk about game 2. Stick around. And game 3, obviously, before we get to the return of Max Scherzer.
Today's episode is sponsored by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each one out serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. I always talk about this. This has been my grab-and-go snack, whether I've been at work, between on the road, whether I'm at golf, whether I'm watching a Jays game. I've been loving the Wonderful Pistachios. No shells variety. The lightly salted has been what I've been on recently. Perfect when I am going golfing because it's very convenient. I can have my golf glove on, just crack them open, pop a few into me, keeping me feeling full and satiated throughout the round until I can get a bigger meal in after my golf round, or just between shifts when you are at work. So whether you are running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios is the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
So, Carter, continuing on, obviously, game 1, it was what it was. I know we spent a lot of time on it, but you know what? Looking back, it was a game that happened, really. It was dead in the water from the first inning on, and I don't know. I could understand people being, just sort of whatever with that game, maybe turned off the TV. I understand that because the Jays were having zero fight in that one. So it is what it is, but going into game 2, you see this offense get back to the things they were doing. And obviously this is the game that Blue Jays won, so it's a little bit easier to be pumped up and excited for this one. Jose Berrios, Carter, you talked about it a little bit, absolutely goes out there and gives you a gem. 7 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, technically no earned runs, 5 Ks, 3 walks. And you know what? Just a fantastic outing. That sends it off to Yariel Rodriguez to get 1 out. And then Chad Green comes in and finishes up the ball game. So from a pitching standpoint in game 2, I think you're thrilled with what you saw. I mean, even really from Chad Green, a guy who we really haven't had amazing things to say about, but decent outing for the 1 inning that you needed him, I guess, here in a very low stakes environment.
Well, exactly. It's pretty easy to pitch when you're up 7-1 in a baseball game. So with Chad Green, if he's being thrown in those situations, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Chad Green's one of those guys, I'm going to kind of keep this short and sweet, but Chad Green's one of those guys that I don't necessarily think the Jays should DFA, but I do not want him pitching in any sort of leverage whatsoever. This is a guy that is probably just your 8th relief pitcher. There's a spot for him on the team if he's throwing in the 5th inning, the 6th inning, or if they're up 1 million runs, I'm not really going to have too much of a problem with that. But you can just tell the game's going to go a whole lot better. Jose Berrios struggles a little bit in the first inning, but is able to get out of it. And then the first pitch of the first inning, Aaron Savali, Bichette absolutely pimps that ball. Off the bat, I wasn't sure if it was gone. I was pretty sure it was a gap shot, but I just looked at Bichette. That's all I had to do, and I knew immediately because he, again, admired that ball when you hit it that hard first pitch of the baseball game, especially when things didn't go well the game before. I loved it. Absolutely loved that stuff from Bichette. And what a weekend Bichette did have. This was kind of just the start of it. Let's go over to Jose Berrios. Obviously, that kind of was the man of the hour. Just looked very sharp in this game. Usually does take advantage of the worst teams. Because, again, the stuff is there for Jose Berrios, and it's definitely going to play when you don't have the most prolific hitters in lineups. It was interesting to see the way he attacked hitters in this game. When he went against lefties, he used pretty much everything. He used all 5 of his pitches. It really did rely on the front door sinker against lefties, which I thought was a little bit interesting. Does have that cut a little bit away from them and just kind of throws them a lot of times, not necessarily expecting that from Jose Berrios or even just a right-handed pitcher in general. And then against righties, it was pretty much just a sinker and slurve combo, and he moved that all around the zone. He really used that slurve efficiently at the bottom of the zone. And it's kind of seemed like you just pick a spot and pick a quadrant at least, and it would be on that outside part of the plate. It would be on the top right corner of the strike zone, be in the bottom left corner of the strike zone, whatever it was. And this had a lot more meaning because of what happened in that first game of the series. You use 6 of your bullpen arms. If you don't get length from Jose Berrios, that might be an issue. I know you do have an off day Monday, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But again, you don't want to throw a bunch of guys early on in the season because there's a bigger picture here. You don't want to overwork your bullpen arms. Jose Berrios, 7 2/3 innings pitched. You kind of went over the stat line. Just a great performance, great bounce back performance from this team after just a horrific start to a series.
Yeah, and that's what you need, right? Like, and we talk about the fight and the grit of this 2025 Toronto Blue Jays team. Looking back over the last few years, that hasn't been there. It hasn't been the ability to bounce back. The sort of momentum is almost nothing for this team. If it's good or bad, it seems like this team is just very day to day. Like you can't look at one game and think, oh, well, that's what they'll bring the next day, because that's not what happens. And we always talk about, the only thing that's consistent is the inconsistencies of this team. And that's absolutely true when it's good or when it's bad, is the fact that, yeah, I don't know. They were just able to pull themselves out of the mud after getting smoked around to win this ball game. And you're right, Bichette was fantastic. Vladdy bomb in this game. You had David Schneider going 2 for 3 with 3 RBI. That's just, and I got to give him his hat tips when
the guy wasn't even supposed to play in the game.
Yeah, that's right.
Has a Barger late scratch. Lucas moves up the 2-hole, and Schneider comes in and has easily his best game of the season.
Oh, by far, yeah, and you're right. I think getting Nathan Lucas, seeing what he would do in the 2-hole there, a little weird, obviously, but just with the lineup fluctuations, he's hitting 2, and you know what? Did a pretty good job of it. 2 for 4 on the day. I don't know. Can you really complain with a guy that you're just sort of throwing up there for a game? I don't think so. I think you're pretty happy.
Yeah, I think that just shows that clearly the Toronto Blue Jays have a new way of moving forward. Bichette's going to be leading off. It's going to be whoever in the 2-hole. Doesn't necessarily matter who it is. And they are going to be keeping Vladdy in that number 3 hole. But I quickly just wanted to go over what Bichette did do over this weekend. In the third game, had some RBIs as well. And for a first game that was not very good, still had 3 hits in that first game. But Bichette, over that weekend stretch, went 6 for 14. Obviously did have a home run in that game. 4 RBIs, a run scored, just came up in clutch situations. And going to the third game, we'll talk about that a little more. Bichette was the main source, the only source of the offense there. So credit to Bichette. Obviously, nice seeing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. launching baseballs into orbit. David Schneider, again, just looked a little bit more patient in his return here. That was one thing he was very successful at in 2023, is that he was really picking his pitches and wasn't chasing a whole lot. David Schneider looked pretty good in that baseball game. I'm not sure if it's going to lead to a ton more playing time just because of the way this roster construction is going. But yeah, credit to David Schneider, and just credit to the Toronto Blue Jays for having a very good bounce back game. And this was a little bit underrated, I found here, was that John Schneider, just when you're up, again, 5 runs in a baseball game, Yariel Rodriguez comes in for Jose Berrios, only throws 5 pitches. There's no need to throw him in that 9th inning. It would have been very easy to just let him slot out and go for that 9th inning. Then you might not have him available in game 3, depending on how things went. You did use him in game 3, was very good. So I give John Schneider a little bit of credit there. And just in general on this season, I know a lot of people have been very hard on John Schneider. I'm not going to say he's the best manager of all time, but there has been drastic signs of improvement with John Schneider. It looks like he's a lot more confident in his decisions, knows the game a little bit better, knows the guys that he's around, seems like a little bit better as well. So I wanted to give a little bit of a hat tip for to John Schneider for what he's doing this season.
Yeah, and Carter, this goes back to it. I know we've gotten some comments over the past few days about John Schneider. At the end of the day, yes, he's making better decisions. But even before, when we were giving him a little bit of grief in the past couple of years, it all came back to the fact that this baseball team and these players weren't playing well around for John Schneider in some cases. Yes, some bad decisions, but now it also helps out a ton for him, and why I'm giving him a little bit of leeway is that the guys are playing better around him, so he has more options and more things to do. But yes, John Schneider absolutely made bonehead decisions that me and you talked about a ton on this podcast that got us quite upset. But I'm fully on board with John Schneider right now. I don't think he's done anything super egregious to really call for me to do any kind of call out on the podcast for him. I think he's been fine. I think he's done the job. I think he's made the right decisions, moving Vlad to the 3 spot, understanding that, maybe that's where he is the most comfortable. I think it's the proactiveness right now with John Schneider more than anything. I think he's getting on top of things. If he sees something happening, okay, he's reacting to it. Where in the past few seasons, it seemed like it took him 30 games to make a decision to change something up. And when you stand pat, that's sometimes what kills you more than anything.
Well, and he's been doing good at playing the hot hand. We see Addison Barger going on an insane hot streak. He's hitting 3. He's hitting 2. Alejandro Kirk, when he was going on that little bit of a tear that he had, he's hitting 4. He's hitting 5. He's at one point, he was even hitting 3 in this lineup. So I think, like you said, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that proactive approach that we've seen from John Schneider, is that he's clearly learning from his mistakes. And that's what you want to see from a manager with not a lot of experience in the MLB. But another thing with that is that it's just going to be a whole lot easier to manage a baseball game when you have 4, 5, 6 bullpen arms that you can go to, not, Chad Green being your closer in the year of 2024. So that obviously helps out a little bit. Last thing I just wanted to go over for game 2 was that Jose Berrios probably shouldn't have given up any runs in this baseball game. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I throw to home plate, just horrible throw. Like, I'm going to give him a little bit of slack here, and that's not a good throw to Alejandro Kirk. Can't really make the tag there. Doesn't really matter in retrospect, but in closer games, you got to be making those plays. But again, it doesn't really matter. You win 7-1. We'll take that any day of the week. But the third game is where we kind of have a lot to talk about. There's a little bit of controversy in that third game. Ton more we want to get into, but we will come at you with some third game reactions and analysis after this short break.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know I talk FanDuel all the time, even when, we aren't doing their ad, because they're my go-to place for betting. And I've been slowing down on the bets lately, but, I get sucked back in when the Blue Jays start playing well. It's like, oh, I can bet on my favorite team again. And right now, the Blue Jays, outside of this weekend, are doing pretty good. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And trust me, I was doing a little bit of both. I was doing a little bit of gambling, a little bit of sunburning on the beach. So, I get best of both worlds a little bit. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Bonus bets are massive. Get in on it while you can, because really, that's free money to play with as long as you win that first $5 bet. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So, Carter, continuing on, you said it. Third game, that's where I think we look for what the big question coming out of the weekend is, or the big storyline coming out of the weekend. And you hit the nail on the head. Game 3 was where it was at, because the Blue Jays, I don't know, again, we talk about the grit and the grime and being able to, fight and battle through stuff. And well, it goes back to my point from earlier in the podcast. This team has zero momentum from day to day, sometimes even inning to inning, Carter. So I don't know. Do you want to just get right into it?
Yeah, let's jump into it here. I'm going to kind of go over Chris Bassitt. Like, I'm not going to go into it too much because I think this just kind of was the typical Chris Bassitt start. 7 innings is just very good against the White Sox in general. Chris Bassitt eats bad teams for breakfast. Exactly what he does here in this game. Gives you 6 innings of run ball, 3 hits given up. Like, you can't ask really for anything more from Chris Bassitt. That's not really where any of the dramatics came into in this game. Just again, want to give a little bit of a hat tip before we get into the meat and potatoes, just to Bichette coming up in 2 different spots, hitting RBI singles, being the main source of offense in this game. Bichette, we talked about it in the offseason time and time again. Not even really going to give us a ton of credit on this one, but people were down on Bichette. Don't know how that you didn't really see the signs here. Easiest bounce back player of all time. We both had that in our predictions. Again, not really going to give us a lot of credit because that should have been something that you saw from, another universe, because it was pretty obvious what Bichette was going to do this season in a contract year. But yeah, let's kind of dive into it here. So Chris Bassitt gives you 6 innings. You have Yariel available, has a very good inning in that 7th inning. And then the bullpen kind of blows up a little bit. You use 4 relief pitchers to get 2 innings pitched to get 6 outs. Clearly something went wrong in this game. I don't know who you want to start with. I guess I'll throw it over to you. Do you want to kind of go in order of the relief pitchers that pitched? Do you want to go into something else? I'll give you the floor on this one.
Yeah, no, I think we go in order just because that's how sort of this all laid out. Yariel Rodriguez, again, give him a clap. The guy's been amazing, and I have no problem with Yariel Rodriguez. Brennan Little comes in, goes 2/3 of an inning, gives up 1 hit, 2 runs, no earned as well, with 2 Ks, 1 walk. And I don't know. You know what? Between, I got a little bit of something on everybody here, Carter. Yesterday just wasn't the day for this pitching staff. And I think the worry starts to creep into everybody's head. Obviously with Hoffman, because he's going to hear the majority of everything with the way sort of he came out and performed. In saying that, I think Brennan Little's got to be better. I think Sandlin had a rough day. I didn't love what Sandlin was doing either. I wasn't super happy with the pitch locations from him. I think he was missing the glove quite a bit as well. So I don't know. You can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, I mean, he's like with Nick Sandlin, I'm not really going to focus on him too much because, again, guy's coming off of an injury. Didn't necessarily have his best stuff. Looked okay in the first couple of hitters. So it was kind of weird how it transpired. Really just in between hitters. Looked like he had his stuff and all of a sudden completely lost it at that point. Weirdly enough, it was a 2-2 ball game, but it felt like the game was over really at that. Or when Nick Sandlin came in, it was 4-2, but the game still felt like it was over. As soon as Jeff Hoffman kind of has that pirouette thing that we'll get into when we talk about Jeff Hoffman, that's where I kind of started to lose faith, even though this team has been very good at coming back. But for me, with Brennan Little, like some of the swings he was getting, like I know, like it's weird with Brennan Little because he doesn't really throw strikes ever. Like that's what you see with Little, and he's just getting whiffs on the curveball in the dirt. It is an unbelievable pitch. You got to use what you have. You got to use your assets, obviously. But if you just don't swing when Brennan Little's pitching to you, you're probably going to draw a lot of walks. I think that's starting to be what hitters are figuring out at the plate. But Brennan Little, not really going to blame him on this game. I'm going to kind of go over the Jeff Hoffman stuff here. And I kind of want your opinion on it. This is the main conversation I do want to have is with Jeff Hoffman. So he comes in right away, commands all over the place. You can tell immediately from the first fastball, it's not even close to where this guy is aiming. He's throwing a ball that's either 5 feet off the plate, it seems like, or an absolute cookie right down the middle, whether it's the split or the fastball. Doesn't necessarily matter what pitch he's throwing. And then that fielding display that he had as well. Gives up a walk early on. And then there's a little dribbler that goes to Jeff Hoffman. I think he nutmegs himself, does a little pirouette. Maybe wanted to be a ballerina in his past life. Completely falls over. Gives up the tying run there. That's just a tough display of baseball. Again, I'm not going to get very upset about that because Jeff Hoffman obviously is not trying to do that. But that's a play, unfortunately, you do want to see your pitcher make in the highest leverage situation in that baseball game. And just with the Jeff Hoffman numbers, I kind of wanted to go into 5 ERA, has had some blow-up performances. So I guess the bigger question here is, are you trusting Jeff Hoffman in this closing role? Do you want to be some sort of hybrid, or are you completely kicking Jeff Hoffman to the curb here, especially with Yimi Garcia coming back, maybe the way Brendan Little and Yariel Rodriguez are pitching? What are you doing with this closing role moving forward, and does it involve Jeff Hoffman whatsoever?
It's tough. It is a tough decision because a closing role is very important. It might be one of the most important, outings for a baseball player. Obviously your starter has to be great and your closer has to be great, right? It's the front and the back. Now the tough part is how do you take a guy out of that position that was designated for him? And without, and don't get me wrong, he hasn't been good. And I think a lot of players would understand, and I think a lot of fans would understand if you pulled him out of there. I don't know what the right answer is here. I think you can't yet. I hate to say that, but this team is doing well. I think you got to ride with them. Again, do I love it? No, I think that other guys, you could just have a ride the hot hand type of system for a closer. You're seeing a lot of teams have problems with their closer and, switch it up midseason. Is that something that the Jays can look into? Or certain guys for certain situations? I don't know. Or, hey, you go out there and you throw 3 pitches and they look horrible. Well, yeah, we know it's probably not going to go well. That's, I think, the difference with Hoffman more than anybody is you can tell right away. If he's going to have a bad day, right away, every time you can tell if it's going to be a good or a bad day. So, again, John Schneider comes out after the game and apologize for the language here. Says, we trust the shit out of the closer. That's straight up. That was all he had to say. And I think that's fair. You can't go out to the media and say, hey, the guy that's supposed to be locking down our baseball game is garbage. You can't say that. You got to go in there and have your guys back. And again, he hasn't been straight up horrible this year. It's just when he's bad, he's bad. And when he's good, he's really good. So it's a very tough mix here, Carter. I really don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah, this is a pretty delicate situation, I would say, because you brought in Jeff Hoffman to be that high leverage guy, pretty much promised him that he was going to be the closer of this baseball team. Again, like you said with Jeff Hoffman, you can tell right away that he doesn't have his stuff, but a veteran guy, a guy that you're paying a pretty penny to be in these closing situations, what does that tell him if you start to see him struggle and you're pulling him out of those situations? When you see, again, first sign of struggle with a guy with Jeff Hoffman's pedigree, you kind of want him to work through those situations. And you're just, as a player, if your manager doesn't have any confidence in you, he's pulling you out of high leverage situations and not allowing you to work out of the trouble that you kind of make for yourself. Like, why are you even throwing Jeff Hoffman in that situation anyway? There's 2 outs. If you don't trust Jeff Hoffman, why are you putting him in that situation? So I think with that, like, you kind of have to let it play out and you got to let him run with it. And people are very hard on Jeff Hoffman. I get that he has had some blow up starts, but he's blown 4 saves this year out of 21 appearances. He has 17 saves. So that's a pretty good save percentage for a guy like Jeff Hoffman. Every single closing pitcher is going to have blow up performances. There's never going to be a pitcher that doesn't give up a run ever. It's just with Jeff Hoffman, when he is giving up runs, it's not going to be the most fun watch that you have for a baseball team. But saying that, as a closing pitcher, a guy that has had some blow-up starts, I don't think this is one of those situations where it's like, hey, Jeff Hoffman has the 9th inning. Like, every single time, like, no question, it's Jeff Hoffman. I think, like we kind of talked about this a little bit before, I think you kind of have to do this a little bit matchup-based. And when you have Yimi Garcia back, that's another equation that you could, or another answer you could throw into this equation. I think you kind of do a little bit of a trifecta approach here. Use Jeff Hoffman. That's still probably your number 1 guy. I think you still have to go to Jeff Hoffman in most scenarios. But if you have a bunch of lefties coming up, I don't mind using Brendan Little in that situation. I don't mind using Yimi Garcia, especially if Jeff Hoffman, say, threw 25 pitches the day before. I think there's no point of overworking him when Yimi Garcia can be a very effective pitcher. So I don't think Jeff Hoffman shouldn't be the closer of this team. I just think John Schneider should be a little bit more cautious of what scenarios he is throwing Jeff Hoffman in, and maybe use more of a committee approach when it comes to closing out baseball games.
Yeah, you can do that for sure. I don't think there's a wrong answer here, and I don't necessarily know if there's a right answer as of right now, because you could bring in somebody else and they could go and be horrible, and to be honest with you, Jeff Hoffman, 8th in the league in saves right now with 17. Yeah. So you're not going to another baseball team right now and finding a guy that's doing much better. He's 5 back of the number 1 spot, 5 saves back. And don't get me wrong, that's a decent amount of saves. But there are a lot of guys right around the 17, 18, 19 mark. And he's right up there with Emmanuel Clase. There are a lot of guys within this conversation that are, highly touted guys. And Jeff Hoffman's right there with them. So again, sometimes you got to take the blown saves with the great saves. It's going to happen. There are going to be days where your starting pitcher goes out there and doesn't have a good day. Are you going to, blow up the world because your starting pitcher had a bad day again? Well, no, you know that they're going to come back next time and hopefully be better. And that's sort of how it is with saves too. And I don't know. It's a tough conversation to have because you're right. No correct answer, I guess, at the end of the day.
Well, and like when you look at some of the underlying numbers here, like he has 44 strikeouts at 32.1 innings pitched, has 111 whip. You brought up Emmanuel Clase has a 3.5 ERA. His whip is 1.49, so he's running into a little bit of trouble on the base paths as well. Not necessarily having the cleanest saves of all time. And Emmanuel Clase, especially last year, maybe not as much this year the way he's been pitching, but was the best relief pitcher in baseball last season. So it's like any single pitcher is going to have blow-up starts, whether it's Paul Skeens, whether it's, Jose Berrios, whether it's Jeff Hoffman, whether it's whoever. You're not going to be perfect every single time. You're not going to have your best stuff every single time. And I think as a manager, you got to show that you do have confidence in your guys. And then that is a very easy way, if you start pulling guys out early and yanking the chain a little bit early, it's a very easy way to lose a clubhouse. So there is going to be a little bit of, there's going to be some rough moments. There's going to be some rocky times with any closing pitcher ever, but I think what Jeff Hoffman has done with the repertoire he has and just, the efficiency that he's already produced, like he's coming in and he's having clean outings probably 80 to 85% of the time, maybe even a little bit more than that. I don't think that you can really complain about that, but Blue Jays fans have been very hard on Jeff Hoffman because you see that ERA number and then you see kind of the home run problem that he has had a little bit. Like there's definitely are issues with Jeff Hoffman, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as people are making it out to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a little bit of a media thing. Don't get me wrong. You said it perfectly. There are problems, but it's getting overblown here. And I agree because, just anything that happens with the Toronto Blue Jays, it's all over social media. Everybody's got an opinion. And I guess we're guys like that too, but that's what happens. So I just think everybody chill out, look at the statistics, watch the games when he's out there pitching, go back and because we're very reactive. We're a very reactive fan base where whatever game just happened, that's what's leading our thought process instead of, hey, let's take a step back and look what this team is doing. And I'm bad for it too. I'm not trying to, put anything past anybody. I get like that. I get very high, get very low, but I'm trying to be better at that this year of, like I said, not getting too high, not getting too low, sort of stay in the middle. Don't overreact. Don't underreact to things. So again, it is what it is, but Carter, a lot more to talk about tomorrow when it comes to the pitching staff. Specifically,
there we go.
Smokes. Obviously, we want to talk about what this team can do. Are there additions available? Are there additions going to be at the trade deadline? What is the position of need for this team? We talked a little bit about it before, but now, there's teams in my head that are starting to pop up that, hey, if they're not quite great by the trade deadline, maybe that should be a point of contention for the Toronto Blue Jays. But in saying that, we hope everybody has a great day, great start to their week, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Carter, anything else before we kick out of here, I guess?
I'm going to bring up just kind of two quick things. Just a reminder, Max Scherzer will be pitching on Wednesdays. Want to bring that up one more time on the podcast. We will be breaking that down on the Tuesday episode, and I figured I'd just go over the roster moves that did happen over this weekend quickly as well. Nick Sandlin obviously did come back for the Chicago White Sox series. Nathan Lucas, another guy that was reinstated from those concussion symptoms that he was having after that collision with Ernie Clement. And the two guys that were optioned were Justin Brule and then outfielder Will Robertson. I don't think anyone's necessarily going to have too much of a problem with that. I think those were the easy two guys that you would pick in the situation. But yeah, we're going to keep on track, and the Toronto Blue Jays have an off day. Maybe you can think about what they've done over this weekend, losing a series to the Chicago White Sox. But just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. The likes, comments, all the support recently has been much appreciated. But with all the new people coming in, we have noticed that. I believe it's 76% of you guys are not subscribed, so you are coming back, tuning into the shorts, the episodes, live streams, whatever we do post. It is much appreciated if you guys do subscribe and click the bell to make sure you don't miss any of our uploads. But like I said, thank you guys for watching, and we will be back with you guys again tomorrow.